Thank you very much, Antoine. So what I'm talking today is about, that privatization of our water utilities is proven it isn't worse. So think about that, what happened. 90% of all water utilities we have, or call it also wastewater utilities, 90% of all of them, they are not privatized, they are in public hand, right? So there was a trend 20, 30 years ago. Everybody went for privatization, right? Best example? Well, UK, we all know that, right? So in 1989, there was a law, or not really a law, but there was the idea by Margaret Thatcher. And she said, all our water utilities, we should privatize that. So that's what happened, right? Completely debt-free and free of charge. They gave it to, I think, 10 or 12 at this time, companies who could get these kind of water utilities. 30 years back and later, what happened? I don't think that I see UK as, let's say, top ranked in the water utilities somewhere in Europe. For instance, take the example, non-revenue water. What is the percentage they have in non-revenue water? It's about 13% and even more, right? So that means about
13 or 30?
13, 1-3.
1-3, okay.
Yeah. So it's just one example, right? It's just one. Even France is even worse, but we don't want to talk about that. But let's say,
because 13 is not that bad.
Yeah, but think about countries, for instance, Denmark, Netherlands, or Germany. They have 6 to 7, right? This is just one example. What happened in the UK is everything was just driven on what? On profit. So the infrastructure, there was no really investment in infrastructure even more. So let's say there was a lack of, I wouldn't say competence, but let's say who took over all the utilities? Investment funds, private companies, who were not really in the field of water. So that's what happened. But I don't want to ride all the time on UK. I can also go to your country, which is France. They started even earlier. They started in the 1850s to privatize all of these water utilities. Because what happened then? Big companies as Veolia, Sauer, or even Suez came out of that game. That was the beginning of everything. So, but what have we seen over the last years? Paris, Bordeaux, they all came back from privatization. They all were back in
that is not true.
They're all back.
It is a cycle. It is true that they came back recently, but if you look over the history, they came back and forth 4 or 5 times, and there's a story about that.
But you have to look on the entire trend. Think also, okay, you don't want to talk about France? Fine.
I'm just thinking, who's the political board of those municipalities? They are all green, and that's the reason why they take it back. And when they go back to someone from the right side, then they will give it back to the private. It was always the case over the past century.
Okay, same with Germany. Same with Germany. Think about that. For instance, in 1889, Berlin Wasser sold 49% of the rights to a private company. Do you know which one it was? Vivendi was part of that. The other part was Veolia, right? So they sold 49% of that.
Vivendi, Veolia, that's the same company.
Yeah, maybe now, but at this time in 89, they were not. There was Vivendi and there was Veolia. Vivendi was just, the operation arm, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I would think so. That is what my research. But don't write on that. They sold 49% on the rights to private equity companies. 89, they had a profit of 80 million, not euros, it was at this time German marks, but pretty high profit. Just a couple of years later, they were totally in loss. Why is that? Because of the contract. They had a contract that the private owner had to get profit out of that no matter what. So what happened? The people started going against this contract, and nowadays Wasser Berlin had to get chairs back to be again the majority leader. I think they are now 60-70% or even more, right? And they have to push back all that out because of the pressure by the people. Because even that has proven that it doesn't work. Think about, let's say, my hometown or close to my hometown, which is Rostock. There was a concession for 25 years to Remondes. 25 years. 2 years back, they started thinking, okay, we want to have it back in our hand and no longer in private hand. Because they all just want to maximize the profit. They all want to maximize the profit, and the result is that prices increasing. The invest in infrastructure, well, we all know that. I have given the examples once about Germany. It's really lacking, and the results are not that good. So more and more the trend, that's what we see. in the market. You can look at UK, you can look at France, you can look at somewhere else. They all go back from privatization because everything came from the 80s, 90s because of the liberalization. But there are also other examples.
I think you're widely wrong, but
think about the for instance the Netherlands. What happened in the Netherlands? They gave a law by 2004 that this will never happen. They placed the law for that you can't privatize the water utilities. Even, for instance, some cities, for instance, Hamburg, a place in Germany, right, in the north. Even they have a law in place that you are not allowed to privatize the water utilities. So that is also the other trend you can see, that more and more the utilities taking back their own utility and taking back the concession rights from the privates.
So that's what you call a trend. You take a couple of first world European country and you say that is a trend. Interesting. I'll let you finish.
I'm almost finished. I mean, what we can also see, this is a little bit another trend, and we discussed this with Aarhus Water in Copenhagen. We asked them, one of the last questions was, what is a trend? What about the utilities? I mean, we have 6,000 utilities in Germany. We have 50,000 utilities in the US, but we have 13, for instance, water and wastewater in the UK.
17.
It depends a little bit how you count that. We have 10 in the Netherlands. We have tons in France. So what is the trend? And the trend is also that they become bigger due to the fact that they need the competences. They need to have, let's say, to share their knowledge. It is easier to operate from a bigger perspective as to give all the wastewater water utilities to the local communities, to the local towns, which supply water to 3,000 people. Who is taking care about that? The mayor. The mayor is responsible for the water. And what about the knowledge of the people who run the utility? That's what we see also, that the utilities become bigger and bigger and bigger. We see that in Denmark. We have seen that in the Netherlands. We see this more and more in Germany. We have seen this in Spain with Acciona and all the other companies. So this is another trend. I would say it is worse that we strive for that. So that's what I've seen over the last, years.
Okay, on the last part, let's start with the last part.
Okay.
I would agree with you. Consolidation is a good thing, and consolidation will enable to have economies of scale. But that is, to me, also something which is quite up for debate, because we are building bigger utilities, but I think those utilities have to change their role, and that is something I will discuss in my top 3, which is pretty funny because, again,
really?
we didn't prepare that. I mean, we are making a surprise each other with those parts, and interestingly, they go in similar directions.
Interesting.
On the privatization, I strongly disagree with you, because I wouldn't say that this is good or bad. No one to say that. I wouldn't even say it's a trend, because you're citing some countries, and probably you're right to a certain extent. I wouldn't say that France is a trend, but that is another discussion. But if you look at other countries like Saudi Arabia, like
I'm talking just about industrial countries. I'm not talking about Mexico where this failed. Indonesia totally failed.
Okay, then let's take the US.
I'm talking just about the home turf. I'm pretty no. Right, pretty well no.
Okay, so you're saying it's a trend about the 4 countries which you're very familiar with.
No,
it's interesting.
I'm saying it's a trend, for instance, in the industrial countries, especially in Europe, what we see. That's what we see. I mean, 30 years ago, we had the liberalization because of the energy, about the telecommunication, as well about the gas market. And in the same spot, the water utilities jumped in and they privatized a couple of the utilities. For instance, to Veolia, to all the big players, right?
I think you're mixing stuff.
They are coming back and taking back the rights to take over the control over the water utilities.
I think you're mixing stuff, because really there is not this black and white as you describe. It's not like fully privatized or fully public. I think the right thing is in between, and that's the real trend we see out there, which is the private-public partnership. PPP projects are the number one way nowadays to do a new project when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to these kind of utilities, and not only in the developing world, in many countries that's the case. And there are few exceptions to that rule. You're right, the UK is a full exception to that rule. They're fully privatized. And on the other hand of the scope, I would say there's Singapore, which is the other full exception to that rule, where everything is public.
Yeah, but you don't have to go that far. Even the Netherlands, as I said, they have the law. You can't go private. It is not allowed. Full stop. And you have just 10 utilities, but they are responsible for the entire.
That is up for debate. It's like when you say in France, EDF for long until last year was doing the full electricity and was private company, but with the state as 87% shareholder. So is it a private or public company? And the same is true in the Netherlands. If you take a Vitens, if you take these kind of companies, an Alliander, how are they public or private? I mean, it's a public company under private laws. So that's somehow what I'm saying with the private-public partnership. So I would be cautious by saying that privatization is really a bad thing. And there's something which I would be even more cautious, which is you're saying they do all for profit, and that's bad.
No,
And
I'm not saying.
I would say
it's
water
never.
has to be profitable,
Sure.
regardless of its
Sure.
private, public, a mix or whatever. Water has to be profitable. The point where you're right is that you shouldn't go over the top with the profits, in the sense that you should not do profit to the detriment of your service.
But isn't that what we have actually have seen in the UK, for instance, where everything is 100% privatized?
You gave the example of Paris, which to me is a good example to that extent, because depending...
You're jumping from the UK to Paris.
Because actually Paris is interesting, because
Well,
depending...
it was privatized and now it's back.
Depending on which people you're talking with, you're going to tell a fully different story. The story you hear usually when you're talking with Suez or Veolia, because usually it's Suez gets it, then it's public, Veolia gets it, then it's public, and so far and so on. It's really a cycle. But if you talk with those private companies, what they will tell you is that they take a situation which is horrible, like leaks everywhere, low quality of service. So they ramp it up for the duration of their contract. And to ramp it up, they need more money, so they are raising the prices, and so they bring a high quality of service. And when they bring that high quality of service, then the municipality takes it back, because now it's good, they can just live on it for 20 years. And I think both stories might be wrong, but most stories have to be listened to, and I think the truth is somewhere in between.
Okay, but let's take just this one. Let's take just one figure: the non-revenue water, which gives us a little bit an idea how good the infrastructure is. What is the number in France?
Which gives you an idea of
It's
how
23%
that's
non-revenue
nonsense.
water.
That's,
But
I mean,
that's all
giving
about
a
the
country
infrastructure.
number is a nonsense. If you take Paris, for instance, they have 0.5%. Why? Because everything is in very big canals underground and nobody is measuring anything. So then you have good numbers. I mean, you can do a full theory about that.
So what you're saying is the numbers we get non-revenue, for instance, the 23 from France or the 13 from UK or the 7 from Germany, they're all bullshit?
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. For a very simple reason, which is first, you only know what you measure.
Sure.
And then you only know about the measurements which get reported. So I would assume that aside from very specific exceptions, like again, Singapore, most of the numbers we hear are all underestimated for a very simple reason. If you're a bad pupil, you will not measure, and if you measure, you will not communicate. So if you look, there's a very interesting case about that in David Lloyd Owen's book, Global Water Funding, where he explains how many countries have not that bad numbers, but when you look into the details of it, there's like 17 utilities reporting out of several hundred. And I'm not saying the numbers are total bullshit. I'm just saying that it's an indication.
Exactly.
Take it like an indication.
Okay, but let's say if we take the 23% as indication, so you are saying it is good that there was a mix all the time from, I mean, you gave the example. Let's say Veolia take over Paris and they had to increase the tariffs because they wanted to invest into the infrastructure. Then the next party is coming, they want to invest into infrastructure to increase the number. But in the end, the result, the indication number, we said it right now, is 20% in non-revenue water. So would you say it is a good example of that it works? Is non-revenue water the number one
North Star metric? Is it really that number? That's the most relevant.
It's just one number to talk
How
about.
How often do you breach quality in terms of water, in drinking water? Do you have that number? I mean, what's the connection rate of people?
Is it a little bit because, let's say, you want to defend France, or is it, let's say, you want to defend the system?
Not at all. I'm really a firm believer that the future lies in private-public partnerships with a high strength to the private part. So
but then
I wouldn't call the UK a failure at all. The UK has succeeded in taking a situation which wasn't that good and bring it to a level where every single of these private big utilities has the means to invest in R&D, in innovation, in new projects, which is not the case in many of the municipal utilities you see. So maybe, honestly, I wouldn't care if a consolidated utility is private or public, as long as they operate the same way.
So you would say that UK, for instance, the water utilities in UK, they are somehow the North Star in let's say, to look for. I mean, I remember that we have been to Copenhagen, that we talked about that Scandinavia is somehow the North Star, and I don't see that they are 100% privatized as they are in UK, and they are ranked all the time somewhere on the top. So I think there must be a balance.
But they are big. They are big. They are allowed to charge. I mean,
in the UK,
you're saying that an indicator is the price.
We have 13 utilities in the UK, so they're also big. They're serving 50 million people. Come on.
But that's what I'm saying.
It's the same.
You're comparing to Denmark, and then you're saying that private companies, they charge really high rates, and we were in Denmark, and who was the highest rates in the world? Denmark.
Exactly.
And it's public companies.
But let's say go back a little bit just to the indicator number. We said non-revenue water, therefore it is 6%.
That is one indicator.
Exactly, but if you take all the others, you don't find UK always on the top. You always find Scandinavia, for instance, on the top.
Okay, I'll give you an example. When I had the discussion on that microphone with one of my colleagues, Olivier Narbet, who's the best specialist I know when it comes to non-revenue water. And I was bouncing at him all these numbers. And at some point he was laughing and was saying, he used to be working in Azerbaijan and he was trying to reduce non-revenue water there. And they were not measuring because they just had an abundance of water. So whenever there was too much leaks in the system, they would just open a new line and more water was flowing down from the mountain. And then they were having enough water. And he said over the years he was working in Azerbaijan, he was able to bring non-revenue water down from 90% to 70%. Which just gives you an idea of how much water was leaking out. And to me, the rationale of that story is the following, is that when you don't have a water scarcity problem, which is the case in many places in France, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how we want to see it, then non-revenue water is not the right indicator. I think when you're going to water distribution, which is what you're looking at and aiming at, apparently I would say that water quality is the real good indicator. And how often do you have cases of bad quality in the countries we were just mentioning? Not that often. And I'll not spoil my number because that's one of the numbers I'll take in my top three. But there's a counterexample in a country which arguably has even more money than all the ones we've talked about.
Do you know? And over the last decade, the UK water utilities, they paid in fines because of quality of water, leakage, a lot of things. 500 billion in a decade.
And what's wrong with that?
It's a
private company. They do something wrong. They get to pay a fine. It seems to me like the system works.
What happened then? They go back. I mean, how do they get the money back? Come on. They go to the people who have to pay for the water. That's all they do.
It's the basic of economics. You need to have a balance between offer and demand and price.
My point here is that you have maybe everything is privatized. Maybe it is a little bit privatized over the edge because of investment companies, investment group from overseas, which have no clue about water. They just want to get profit as much as possible out of that. I agree. We all have to do profit. That's fine. But you don't have to forget, to invest also. That you have to find the balance. And it looks like that the UK is a little bit over the edge. Would you agree on that?
I wouldn't agree on that, no. And actually, last week I was discussing with Seth Siegel, and I will ask him, or even I will pay for that, so that he sends you a dedicated copy of his book, Troubled Water, What's Wrong with What We Drink. And you'll see the full explanation as to why profits in water would be a really good thing.
I never go against
under the full authority of the mayors, which have always a good incentive to never raise the price because you never win an election because you raise the price.
You don't get the point.
You don't get the point either. I'm just saying it's not black or white. I'm saying it's shades of gray, and you cannot say it's, the bad is they're private and the good is they are public.
Absolutely not.
That's fully true.
But the trend is that more and more cities, local communities are going back. If they are privatized, that they are going back.
Which data do you say more and more?
Well, that's what I told you. I've seen a couple of datas where they are coming back.
Like climate change. Today it's called, so climate change doesn't exist. No, that's the same. It's not because you saw some things that it's a generality and it's true. I think the trend is rather in the other direction. It goes towards PPP.
Never ever. I'm not talking about PPP, but I'm talking about totally privatization. That's what I'm talking about. That privatization, 100% privatization of water utilities. It has proven that it doesn't work in our industry.
Okay, I need some additional data. I don't want, because I'm absolutely sure you're wrong and you're absolutely sure that you're right. So Let's say if you have that data about what's the rate of privatization, so 100% privatization versus what's the rate of public, 100% public. If you have that data, share it with us. I'd like to have the real data. And worldwide, not just a four country Björn loves to talk about.
Globally, 90%, everything is not privatized. 90% of all water utilities.
So how is that a trend?
Well, years before, it was more. That is a trend.
Okay, I'll double check the number. I don't believe that just because he says it. But
as always, you don't believe that.
On the consolidation level, I would say that is where we should agree to agree for once, because you mentioned these numbers. 50,000 utilities. That's just a water utility in the US. You take on top of that the wastewater utilities. That makes 90,000 utilities in total in the US. You have 700 wastewater utilities in Switzerland, where we are sitting today, which to the scale of the country is some of a nonsense. And there's a country effort right now to close the smallest one and to bring them together with the big one. So probably there's some sense in that.
Think about that. In the UK, these 13, you have 13. I talked about 13, you said 17. How many people they serve? 55 million. Take the 60,000 utilities we have. They serve to 82. This balance doesn't make any sense, right? This ratio. So that means you have 6,000 for 82 and you have 13 for 55. And it works, that you get quality to the people. So that makes definitely no sense. And a true story, years ago, directly after study, I went to one of these water reservoirs, right? And all these water reservoirs and small water works, as I said, we're driven by the local government, by the local municipality. There were people which, they were responsible for the streets, for the grave, for everything, and also for the water reservoir. So we lowered down the water because we wanted to check the concrete. And we found so much stuff inside the water, in the water reservoir, where I really thought, well, is that really the quality I would love to have? It is just an example. We will not find it everywhere. But the point is really give that into the hands of people who have really knowledge about what they do.
I'll close with a last thought, just because that is now it's an anecdote. We are sitting right now in Brutisellen, right? So if you flush...
Close to Wetzikon, right?
If you flush your water here, it goes to the Araneugut in Dübendorf. And the Araneugut in Dübendorf is probably the most advanced wastewater utility I've ever met, ever worked with. They have been doing every single research project. They have been advancing the science of micropollutant removal. And they are really, really, really bringing the full topic forward all the time. And they are a private company which is acting under a delegation of public service. So it is the best example you can find, and it is a fully private company. So I would say mic drop, but I cannot because it's on a stand. But I'd be really interested to be wrong, honestly. If you can prove me with the data that there is really a trend, then I would say we have even more of a problem in the world than I thought when it comes to water, because we're doing it wrong.
Do we?
Yeah.
Okay, let's check that out.
Good.